NFL preseason week 2 kicks off tonight with the Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles. And while, of course, we'd love to go deep into some of these preseason games, it's very tough to get the right accurate information about who is playing, things to focus on, players to hone in on, coaches to hone in on, and so on and so forth. So instead of trying to break down Dorian Thompson-Robinson and the Cleveland Browns offense going against the Eagles tonight, Newbie and I are going to be talking more from a general perspective of do's and don'ts when it comes to betting the rest of this week's preseason games, as well as also next week's preseason games. So welcome on into GoldSheet TV. I'm Eric Pauly with my co-host Dan Alexander at Newbie Talks on Twitter. And we're going to jump right into it. Quick reminder, GoldSheet.com, all 3 products, one price, one rate on GoldSheet, and the LTS picks for GoldSheet that were on last season on GoldSheet.com are now hosted on WagerTalk.com. But let's dive right into it. So one of the worst kept secrets in the NFL is how good the Ravens are in the preseason. They did not cover against the Eagles last week, but they got the win. Of course, that is an angle of something to be looking at in the preseason, but let's talk more generally what to be looking on. I know you had some facts and figures, Newbie, about the Ravens preseason. So let's dive into that first. Talk to me about betting on the Baltimore Ravens in the month of August.
Well, and that's the thing, and it's why we're not really going to belabor the point much, is because anyone who is betting on the preseason knows everything there is to know about the Baltimore Ravens and this absolutely improbable stretch that they've had in the preseason. And the thing is like, everything went wrong for the Ravens last week against the Eagles. Is why they didn't end up covering, because towards the end of the game, they end up having a pick 6, and then the Eagles could finally do it. They could cash the money line ticket, and then Ian Book misses the 2-point conversion. The Ravens end up winning by a point, and the streak stays intact. So even when their backs are against the wall, somehow they find a way to win. And in case people, know the overview of the stats but don't have the specifics, it's 24 straight outright wins, and pretty dominant wins, because they're 20-4 against the spread in those games, just failing to cover last week. But prior to that, 20-3. And Harbaugh in his tenure, it's not just like he decided to turn it on. He's 44-12 straight up, and in those games, 36-19-1 against the spread in the preseason. So they don't only beat people, they absolutely dominate them. And when you think about a run like this, I mean, there's something that I pulled here from bookies.com. They did an article on just how improbable a run like this would be. So winning 24 straight games in the NFL preseason has the likelihood of 5.96 million to 1 of having a run like this. So they wrote some of the things that are more likely or less likely. So more likely, you're more likely to get attacked by a shark, get attacked by a grizzly bear in Yellowstone, get killed by a local asteroid strike. Those are things that are more likely to happen than the Ravens winning 24 straight games. So it's just insane to me when you talk about this dominant run that they've had. You're more likely to get attacked by Cocaine Bear while you're walking out in Yellowstone National Park than the Ravens winning a stretch like this. It's been insane, Pauly.
So got to shout out bookies.com for that information. That is a hilarious way to put into perspective what the Baltimore Ravens have done. But if you want to, kind of take it another level and think about how they're getting to this level, a number of things obviously have to be, put in place. For starters, you need to have a coach that – these are all things, again, in general that you could focus in on for handicapping the rest of the preseason, all the other 31 NFL teams. But the Ravens are just a great example of this. So for starters, you have a coach who obviously, cares about winning and is preparing his team for the preseason. So that's something that you can look for in traits from coaches, because you can see every coach's win-loss record in the preseason, which coaches, have tendencies to try harder in some of these games, and so on and so forth. But number 2, this is one of the biggest things that works for the Ravens and also will work for betting on and handicapping the preseason in general, is who is playing quarterback. Now, Ralph Michaels at WagerTalk.com does a great job breaking down angles, and he is one of the best preseason, if not the best preseason handicappers I've ever seen, because all this is similar to the NFL draft. This is an information-driven process as well. You need to be reading up on the beat writers of the teams, of the big outlets who cover these teams, and they'll be telling you who is going to be playing tonight, who's not going to be playing tonight, who's had a great week of practice, who's had a bad week of practice, who is a little bit banged up, maybe they took a little bit of a hit, who's injured and is not going to be suiting up for this game. So those are things to keep in mind. Is it's information driven, so you need to know who's playing, and then also who's playing quarterback. Yes, you're going to have a bunch of backups across the landscape, but if the backups are somebody who, might even be able to be a starter on another NFL team, or like in the Ravens case, you have Tyler Huntley, who I don't think it's well known he didn't deserve a Pro Bowl spot last year, but good enough at least to, be serviceable and almost lead the Ravens to a playoffs. Or in a playoff win, I should say, if he's your quarterback in the preseason, that's something you want to love, and that's something you want to look to bet on, right, newbie?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Is you have to, and the thing is too, is not only do you have to do some research here in the preseason, and it's why, as far as making my bets in the preseason, I'll be tapped into people who bet this and win this year in and year out and, follow their lead. I'm not really originating much. I'm not really diving in to these matchups because you don't know who to trust when it comes to preseason. You know what I mean? And you need to do a little bit of your own research, but you also just can't be listening to beat reporters and what they're talking about, because if you were looking at this Eagles game coming up tonight, for a perfect example, again, a team that I'm tuned in on, if you were looking at this game that they're playing against the Browns Thursday Night Football, Browns beat reporters were talking about how you're going to see the starters to start off. You're going to see Deshaun Watson in this game. And if you were listening to that early in the week, you may have made a play on over 38.5. And now on Thursday morning, right before we press record, there's some serious money coming in on the under. It's hammered down to 35.5, and on the move down even lower after things came out that really no one's going to be playing in this Thursday night tilt for either team when you're talking about the starting players, the impactful players. So I feel like this is the kind of time that unless you have a bead, you're never going to be betting early in the week, because 9 times out of 10, unless you have a bead and a direct line to who actually is going to be playing, you're likely going to be on the wrong side of moves, which is in stark contrast to the way that I bet the NFL in season, that majority of my bets are made by Tuesday afternoon. So the timing that you bet preseason, I think, is completely different, and the way that you bet preseason is completely different. But if you do have a bead, it can be the most profitable part of the year. I mean, look at a guy like Adam Trigger. He hasn't lost a game in the preseason yet. And that's because of the avenues that he has and the information he's able to get. So if you have it, more power to you. I just don't have enough of those lines of communication to feel like I should be betting games on Tuesday and Wednesday.
And at GoldSheet, we're also 4-0 on WagerTalk to start off the preseason.
Yes.
So, shout out to myself and the rest of the team there. And the way you just put that, I think, was just expertly put. People out there saying you're a degenerate for betting the preseason. Like, how could you possibly quantify the preseason? When the reality of the situation is the preseason is much easier to handicap than an NFL game. The lines are much more inefficient. Like you said, in the NFL, you're betting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 games on Sunday. In this situation, the steam came in, 7-8 hours before game time now, obviously, because that's happening tonight, because we need confirmation of what's going on with these teams. So like we were speaking about before the show, and this is also just a general problem and something to worry, to just keep in the back of your head. As we've seen, a lot of media outlets have been firing a lot of really talented people, unfortunately, laying them off for, this reason or that reason. But what that's done is left a void in the beat reporting. So the game that's tonight and the 2 games that are tomorrow, I read articles from beat writers who I've trusted in the past on all 6 of these teams, and only one article last night around 6 p.m. Eastern from a Cleveland Browns beat reporter from The Athletic mentioned that, quote, no one important for the Browns is playing on Thursday night. I could not get that kind of answer or that kind of assurance or reassurance from any other beat writer, just due to the lack of paying these beat writers and like the layoffs. So that's just another side digression, is the way the industry is now. Like, this is an information-driven thing, betting the preseason, knowing who's playing and who's not playing. So you want to kind of wait and see and make sure you have all your information before you make a bet, because like you said, you could be on the wrong side of a move if you're betting early based on, not anything that's confirmed. But just, again, we only have 2 weeks of preseason. It's not something that, if you're uncomfortable betting the preseason, you don't think you have the right information, lay away. follow the Gold Sheet, follow
Mhm.
Adam Trigger, follow Ralph Michaels, or go from there. But you just need to make sure more than ever that your information is on point when you're betting at this during the months of August in the NFL.
Yeah, and a lot of the beat writers who have stayed around are the hot takes, more editorialized folks. So it's not as information driven as it once was. You know what I mean? The people who stick around are the ones who are having the hot takes, who are having the social media engagement, and that's just the nature of the beast of media in 2023. We don't have the readily available, hey, here's the box score. Hey, here's who's going to be playing. It's just not the type of information that people seek out anymore. And unfortunate for bettors who, always look for an edge at this time of year by following good avenues like that. I'm right there with you. It's kind of the unfortunate side of what's happening across sports media. And unfortunately, Eric, I don't think it's going back, brother.
No, it's unfortunately not, especially, you could speak ad nauseum, AI tools, SEO context. It's not much more simple now and also a lot less costly to be able to get nowhere near the quality of the content, but to get content out using some other tools. So we kind of lumped the do's and the don'ts together there. Of course, we'll recap some do's. Do's is to read up, but also make sure you're reading the right information in closer to kickoff. Looking at teams' depth charts and coaching's history in the preseason. Looking at the quarterbacks and not just who's going to be quarterbacking the first quarter or just the first half. Having an understanding of who will probably be under center throughout the entire game are some do's. And then also another do is if you don't think you have a clue, there are people in the NFL preseason who certainly have a clue, and taking a look at them as a way to go about it. And then recapping some don'ts is don't bet too early in the preseason, because unless you're getting the right information, which is difficult, as we just mentioned, you might end up on the wrong side of a bet because this is all player dependent. And another don't, I would say, is putting too much stock in who is only starting the first quarter or the first half. Like, for example, if you were a big Trey Lance fan or a big Sam Darnold fan and you were betting the 49ers because you thought that they would, turn up and there's a competition and show who was really better, you ended up really holding a loser ticket and laying points with the team that lost by 30 because you were trying to focus in too much on the quarterback and the competition. Again, we went both ways on this already. Are there any other don'ts that just come to mind besides kind of right way to check off this list?
Yeah, and again, I think we both thought we were going to be a little bit shorter on this episode simply because, as we said at the top, this is something that we both felt we used to have an edge on that maybe we don't have as much throughout this season, which, again, that's why I suggest checking out the Gold Sheet and checking out some folks who are really tuned in and starting off hot here in the preseason. But for me as well, it's all based on, be careful who you are listening to, because for instance, there was a huge steam move simply because, we were going to see the starters from the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you play Kansas City Chiefs first half against the New Orleans Saints. And then what happened there? You would be standing with a losing ticket. Sure, okay, you got to see the starters and everything like that, but look at what Andy Reid has done in the preseason. Historically, he's one of those guys who he wants to get his guys reps. Once they play one series, they're going to be yanked, they're going to be out. So, don't get all excited simply because you see starters. Also taking into account who's coaching those starters. Is it a Doug Peterson type who, again, we don't care about the preseason? Is it an Andy Reid type who, again, I want my guys to get reps, but I could care less what the final score is going to be. I could care less how they look. I just want them out there getting reps. So, okay, great. You know that starters are going to be playing, but how long are they going to be playing, and how motivated is their head coach going to be to see them in live action, or does he just want them to get some, their feet under them a little bit? So sure, if you want to just, the beat writer told me these guys are going to be playing, I got a hammer because I know, Pat Mahomes is good. Well, you would have had a losing ticket because who was more motivated in that situation? It was Jameis Winston to look good. Pat Mahomes knows he has a job, folks. Jameis Winston's trying to put a little pressure on Derek Carr. You need to take those things into effect outside of who's just going to be on the field for sure.
Just straight up preaching, brother. Straight up preaching. Couldn't agree more. And then the last note that I will put up for this situation that you just sparked my memory. I wasn't even going to go this route. But obviously, not to overreact or underreact to preseason. That's something that we will cover actually next week on Tuesday, because now I'm speaking about it. But I will briefly just mention that, especially in a situation like the Chiefs, Would Andy Reid have liked for Kansas City's offense to look a little bit better? Of course, there was no Kelsey, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. Sure. With that being said, preseason is time to learn and make mistakes. So you'd rather some good teams, I would say, especially from their starting unit, are not going to be deterred by bad play to start, because that is an indication that they have to get better. And the only way to get better in the NFL is to get pushed and to start slow and, kind of find yourself. So starting off hot and winning, obviously the Ravens are a team that's kind of an anomaly. They win in the preseason. They normally have general regular season and postseason success. But this is where you're supposed to mess up. This is where you're supposed to make mistakes. This is where Patrick Mahomes is supposed to, be working on a new concept and throw an interception, because while he is the GOAT, he still is a human being. So the teams that are doing poorly now are probably teams you might want to either look at in two different ways. Either see if they're actually bad, a la a Trey Lance, who was actually just a bad football player, or if this is a team trying some new things that is trying to just get better and improve, a la of Kansas City Chiefs, who are obviously going to still be a great team. So, Newbie, I think we just figured out on air what we're going to be discussing on Tuesday, talking more preseason, right?
Oh, I'm right there with you, man, because in the world that we live in, it's all about the hot takes. And if you have hot takes coming out of preseason, you're going to have a bad week 1, week 2, week 3 of the NFL season. I'm right there with you, and I like it. We gave them a little radio tease here to make sure that they tune in on Tuesday as we break down overreaction. Don't go through the spin cycle. It'll be a great addition of GoldSheet TV, baby.
Yes, sir. We're going to have a great episode on Tuesday discussing more preseason, some notes and thoughts from what we saw that week, and then again, talking some more strategy. Thursday will be some more college football with Dan and Matt next week. And then just like that college football season week 0 will have kicked off, and NFL Labor Day will be there, and NFL a week after. So don't go anywhere. Liking this video and subscribing to the channel is the best way to help us grow and to make sure you do not miss out any of the content. For the Gold Sheet, I am Eric Pauly at Slime Action on Twitter, and this is Dan Alexander at Newbie Talks on Twitter. We appreciate you, and best of luck if you're betting the preseason this weekend.